Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you here. This is my very first live show. Okay, I still don't see anyone. Hello, nice to... Hello, simpatica. Nice to see you. I guess you are from Italy. Sono italiana anch'io, ma stasera parlerò inglese perché ho scelto di parlare a un pubblico internazionale. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Nice to meet you. It's my very first TikTok live on my own. I already have made a TikTok lives in cosplay, but with my friends. This is the first one. This is the first one on my own. I hope you'll enjoy it. Thank you very much for being here. I hope we will have fun together with our Christmas ghost stories. I also hope you'll be generous with roses and presents, since it's Christmas for everyone. Don't worry, I'm not Chiara Ferragni. I won't promise you anything about offers, about good deeds. I don't collect presents and money for good deeds, but only for me. And I'm very, very, very transparent about this. Okay. So why Christmas ghost stories? Perhaps this is not very known. This is not known in Italy, but in England and in countries that speak English, there's a Christmas tradition that's to read and to tell ghost stories. Why ghost stories? Because Christmas is in winter. In winter, nature apparently dies, so we can feel nearer to our loved ones who have left us. We can feel nearer to the underworld, to the world of dead people. There are also a long and ghastly night to spend together around a fire or at home with family and friends. So why don't play with our fears and tell ghost stories who are perfect on winter nights? Let's begin with the first title. This is Victorian Christmas Ghost Stories. A golden age for ghost stories and Gothic fiction is the Victorian era, the era of Queen Victoria. So I guess it's a good idea to begin with Victorian tales. Let's choose one of them. Which titles can inspire us? The Tapestry Chamber, Bring Me a Light by an anonymous author. Oh, it seems quite good. Bring Me a Light, Ghost Stories. The author is unknown. My name is Thomas Winmore, and when I was a young man, I went to spend a college vacation with a gentleman in Westmoreland. He had known my father's family and had been appointed the trustee of a small estate left me by my great aunt, Lady Jane Winmore. At the time I speak of, I was 1 in 20, and he was anxious to give up the property into my hands. 1 in 20. He was 21 and he was already considered a grown-up man. Okay, it's well, it really was another age. I hope I'll be able to read your messages when you will write them, because yesterday a chat on my streamings didn't work well. Okay. So this young gentleman is 21 and his father wants to leave him his estate. I accepted his invitation to come down to the old place and look about me. When I arrived at the nearest point to the said old place, to which the Carlisle coach would carry me, I and my portmanteau were put into a little cart, which was the only real thing I could get at the little wayside inn. How far is it to Winmore? I asked of a tall, grave-looking lad who had already informed me I could have the horse and cart for £1 a mile. 12 miles toward the Holgate, a mile beyond that to Squire Earl's farm. As I looked at the shaky wild horse, just caught from the moor for the purpose of drawing the cart, I felt doubtful as to which of us, sorry. Sorry guys, someone wanted to stream with me, but I had to turn out. Ma come? Well, perché parlo in inglese? Perché è pensato per un pubblico internazionale. Vabbè, e soprattutto questi racconti sono in inglese, sono tutti parte della letteratura inglese. Buona serata ragazzi, sono i miei alunni di Are My Pupils. Mamma non mi risponde, ma siamo 3 persone dentro la live. Ok, scusatemi. Allora ragazzi, come stavo dicendo, lo ripeto per voi, i racconti di fantasmi natalizi sono un classico della letteratura inglese e delle abitudini degli inglesi che amano trascorrere le notti invernali raccontandosi queste storie così cupe che nelle notti di dicembre effettivamente sono perfettamente ambientate. E ho scelto soltanto racconti in inglese, come era abbastanza intuibile anche dal video che annunciava la live, avremmo parlato in inglese stasera. E poi pensavo anche a un pubblico internazionale, visto che mi seguono diverse persone non sempre italiane qui su TikTok. Comunque a beneficio di chi mi sta seguendo dall'Italia, cerchiamo di fare un piccolo riassunto. Questo è un racconto del 1861, un racconto inglese del 1861, Bring Me a Light, portami una luce, e parla di Thomas Winmore, che all'epoca dei fatti aveva 21 anni, era un giovane gentiluomo che stava per ricevere un'eredità e ovviamente va a visitare la tenuta che lui avrebbe dovuto ereditare, però fin da subito c'è qualcosa che non va. Perché il cocchiere che dovrebbe portarlo è un tizio grande e grosso di poche parole che parla uno strano dialetto, il cavallo poverino è mezzo selvatico e anche molto molto magro. Siamo già in un'atmosfera spettrale per questo. Giusto appunto, non ho ancora avviato la musica. Ok. Quindi se non vi dispiace, io adesso andrò avanti in inglese, perché questo racconto in inglese, al limite se c'è qualcuno che ha l'esigenza di avere un piccolo riassunto in italiano, naturalmente mi fermerò e lo farò. Se la musica vi dovesse dare fastidio, non doveste riuscire a sentirla bene, naturalmente fatemelo presente. Ok, hi everyone. As I looked at the shaky wild horse just caught from the moor for the purpose of drawing the cart, I felt doubtful as to which of us would be the master on the road. I had ascertained that the said road lay over moor and mountain, just the sort of ground on which such a steed would gambol away at his own sweet will. I had no desire to be run away with. Ok, quindi anche la strada non è molto sicura. Classica strada di campagna piena di buche, su un carretto con un cavallo semiselvatico, fantastico. Is there anyone here who can drive me to Mr. Earl's? I asked to the tall grave lad. No but, Father. Oh, nessun altro. Si deve accontentare di questo cocchiere, col suo carretto un po' sospetto. I was puzzled. I was about to ask for the explanation when a tall, strong old man, as like the young one as might be, came out from the door of the house with his hat on and the whip in his hand. He got up into the cart and looking at me said, "You must stand here, sir. We shan't pass Winmore Hall afore the devil brings a light." Oh, seriamente, l'ha detto davvero? Non andranno oltre Winmore Hall prima che il diavolo abbia portato una luce? Ok, fantastico e rassicurante, no? È meraviglioso. But I want something to eat before we start, I remonstrated. I've had no dinner. You won't keep your appetite till supper time, replied the old man. I can gape past Winmore lights for a man, nor the horse neither. Get up, ye, Joe and gentleman a hand. Ok, quindi il nostro passeggero, il nostro gentiluomo Thomas Winmore ha chiesto di avere qualcosa da mangiare perché non ha cenato e gli hanno risposto che deve tenersi l'appetito. È un viaggio da sogno, veramente. Joe did as he was desired and then said, "Will you be home the night, Father?" "Maybe yes, maybe no, lad. Take care of the place." Ok, quindi il cocchiere non sa neanche se sarà di ritorno quella notte. In a moment the horse started and we were rattling over the moor at the rate of 8 miles an hour. Surprise, indignation and hunger possessed me. Quindi il carretto parte a razzo attraverso la brughiera e il nostro Thomas è un pochettino sorpreso e anche arrabbiato per il trattamento che sta ricevendo finora. Beh, non possiamo dire che abbia torto. Was it possible I had been ward of dinnerless into this wilderness against my own desire? Quindi a digiuno e in più in una landa selvaggia in mezzo alla brughiera. I say, my good man, I began. My name is Ralph Thurston. Well, Mr. Thurston, I want something to eat. Is there an inn between this desert and Mr. Earl's house? No, but Winmore Hall, said the old man with a grin. Ecco, stiamo in Winmore Hall, quindi non ci sono neanche osterie, neanche locande, tranne questa Winmore Hall. Ok, fantastico. I suppose I can get something to eat there without being obliged to anybody. It is my own property. Ok, quindi andiamo a Winmore Hall, è casa mia, è roba mia. Mr. Thurston glanced at me sharply. Be it Mr. Lad? I am Mr. Thurston, said I. My name is Winmore. Mr. Tom, the same. Do you know anything about me and my old house? Quindi a quanto pare il cocchiere conosce Thomas, lo conosce come padron Tom, così in familiarità, ma lo conosce. Did you're the heir of the old lady. Mr. Earl is your guardian and farms your lands. I know so much myself, I replied. I want you to tell me who lives in Winmore Hall now and whether I can get a dinner there, for I'm clam as you say here. Sì, ok. Thomas chiede informazioni su Winmore Hall, ma non riceve, non viene a sapere niente che lui già non sappia. Ok, vuole sapere però chi ci viva e se ci sarà qualcosa da mangiare, perché lui per il momento non è ancora un fantasma e ha un certo appetito. Well, it is a sore trial to a young stomach. You must e'en bear it till we get to Mr. Earl's. But surely there is somebody, some old woman or other who lives in the old house, and there's the room. Indeed is there, but it's no but ghosts and devils spawn of that sort. Ok, a quanto pare qualcuno vive a Winmore Hall e si occupa della manutenzione, però a quanto pare sono solo i fantasmi e il diavolo. Non so voi, ma come personale di servizio che si occupa della manutenzione di una casa non mi ispira un'eccessiva fiducia. I am surprised, Mr. Thurston, to hear a man like you talk such nonsense. Ma che accidenti dici? Gli risponde Mr. Thomas. What like man do you happen know that I am, Mr. Winmore? So if I talk nonsense, and I'm no gainsaying what I learned a colleger like you can tell about nonsense, and it's just the things I have heard and seen myself I am speaking of. What have you heard and seen at Winmore Hall? What a body hears and sees to Winmore twixt the sunset and moonlight. And what I used to see times and often when I lived there, farming men told Lady Jane. What I'm not curious to see again now. To get on, Timothy. he added to the horse, or we may change to come in for a fright. Ok, quindi il cocchiere dice, non so cosa possa tu sapere di una persona di me e giudicare se parlo in modo sensato o meno, ma io, caro il mio signor Thomas Winmore, sto solo raccontando quello che ho visto. Ho visto diavoli e fantasmi a casa vostra e non so che altro dire. Adesso andiamo. I did not trouble myself about the delay as he did, but watched him. This man is no fool, I thought. I wonder what strange delusion has got possession of the people about this old house of mine. I remember that Mr. Earle had told me in one of the very few letters I ever received from him that it was difficult to find a tenant for Winmore Hall. Ok, quindi era difficile trovare qualcuno che si occupasse di Winmore Hall. Probabilmente il posto è rimasto libero per gli esseri non umani, chissà. Allora, perché parlo in inglese? Rispondo a D7M perché i racconti che ho scelto sono racconti in lingua inglese, tipici della letteratura inglese, e poi perché pensavo a un pubblico internazionale, visto che comunque su TikTok non mi seguono solo persone di lingua italiana. Però giustamente, visto che la maggior parte del pubblico viene dall'Italia, mi fermo ogni tanto e faccio un riassunto di quello che è stato letto, così potete seguire tutti la storia. Oh, grazie dei cuori comunque. Thanks for the hearts. Se doveste mandarmi anche qualche regalino sotto forma di monete di TikTok, rose, pacchetti, sapete, i soliti, sarebbe molto gradito, perché io non sono Chiara Ferragni, non faccio falsa beneficenza, tutto quello che raccolgo lo tengo onestamente per me, come dico sempre. Va bene. Curiosity took precedence of hunger, and I began to think how I could best soothe my irritated companion and get him to tell me what he believed. Ok, quindi finalmente la curiosità prende il posto della fame per Sir Thomas, e comincia invece a domandarsi come potrebbe estrarre un po' più informazioni dal cocchiere. We were back on the road again, and going across the shoulder of a great fell. The sun had just disappeared behind a distant range of similar fells. It left no rosy clouds, no orange streaks in the sky. Black rain clouds spread all over the great concave, and in a very few minutes they burst upon us. There was a cold, piercing wind in our teeth. I felt my spirits rise. The vast monotonous moor, the threatening sky, and the fierce rushing blast had something for me sublime and invigorating. Oh, fantastico! Adesso non solo Thomas si trova in mezzo alla brughiera con un cavallo pazzo e un cocchiere non molto simpatico, ma si è anche rannuvolato il cielo e comincia a tirare un vento gelido. Meraviglioso, no? Direi che è il paesaggio giusto, proprio un paesaggio da quadro romantico inglese, intendendo per romantico la corrente artistica del primo Ottocento, anche se qui siamo già nel 1861. The vast monotonous... fra l'altro Thomas definisce questa situazione, questo paesaggio proprio sublime. Beh, effettivamente è la parola giusta per indicare questo brivido della natura in tempesta, perfetto per le storie di fantasmi. Ok. I looked around at the new range of moorland which we were gradually commanding as we rounded the hill. I like this wild place, Mr. Thurston, I said. Ok, quindi Thomas dice che gli piace questo posto. Beh, beato lui. Vabbè. Wild enough, he grumbled in reply. This college learning is a deal better than such house and land. Beggars won't live in the house and the land is the poorest in all England. Quindi il cocchiere è un pochino più pratico, un pochino più coi piedi per terra e dice: sì, va bene, a te piace questo posto, ma vedrai che al confronto preferirai la tua cara università. Pensa che nemmeno i mendicanti vivrebbero volentieri. Ciao Eia, tra l'altro. Pensa che nemmeno i mendicanti vivrebbero volentieri qui, e anche la terra è poverissima, quindi anche l'idea di coltivare non è proprio il massimo. Is that the house yonder on the right? There's neither house, good or bad, to be seen from this, he replied. But I observed that he did not turn his head in the direction I had indicated. He kept a look out straight between the horse's ears. I, on the contrary, never took my eyes off the grey building which we were approaching. Ok, quindi Thomas avvista una casa. Nearer and nearer we came, and I saw that there was a sort of large garden or pleasure ground enclosed around the house, and that the road ran past a part of this enclosure, and also past a large open-worked iron gate, which was the chief entrance. Quindi è una bella casa, una casa con giardino e un'entrata molto ampia. Very desolate, cold, and inhospitable looked this old house of mine. Wild and tangled looked the garden. Ok, quindi è un'abitazione signorile. Sì, sto leggendo un libro, Hannah. Per la precisione sto leggendo questo. Victorian Christmas Ghost Stories, quindi storie di fantasmi per Natale dell'epoca vittoriana. Quindi sono dei racconti inglesi scritti tra l'800 e il 900, tra la seconda metà dell'800 e l'inizio del 900. Sì, sto leggendo in inglese perché in origine avrebbe dovuto essere uno streaming in inglese per un pubblico internazionale, ma vedo che sono quasi tutti italiani, quindi ben venga, leggo un pezzettino e poi faccio il riassunto. Quindi Thomas finalmente arriva alla sua famosa villa, quella che dovrebbe ricevere in eredità, ma vede che questa villa, bellissima, una dimora signorile con giardino, in realtà è molto molto desolata, sembra fredda e sembra abbandonata, e anche il giardino ormai si è completamente inselvatichito. Quindi un'abitazione di alta qualità ma senza tracce di presenza umana e quindi molto inospitale. The tall, smokeless chimneys were numerous and stood up white against the blackness of the sky. The windows, more numerous still, looked black, in contrast with the whitish grey stone of the walls. Just as we entered the shadow cast by the trees of the shrubbery, our horse snorted and sprang several yards from the enclosure. Oh, fantastico! Quindi non appena il carro si avvicina a questa abitazione, il cavallo ha uno scarto, insomma, si impenna, si agita. Cioè, è un po' come Frankenstein Junior, quando veniva nominata Frau Blücher. I cavalli che si impennavano. Now for it! It is your own fault for running away and bringing us late, muttered Ralph Thurston, grasping the reins and standing a better hold of the horse. Quindi il cocchiere, insomma, richiama il cavallo e lo sgrida anche perché dice: è colpa tua se siamo arrivati a quest'ora di notte. Sì, il cocchiere, poverino, parla con il cavallo perché probabilmente non ha molte altre compagnie. Timothy now stood still. Timothy è il cavallo. Timothy now stood still, and to my surprise he was trembling in every limb and shaking with terror. Quindi il povero cavallo si calma, il povero cavallo Timothy si calma, però sta tremando dalla paura, povera bestia. Aiuto! Quando gli animali hanno paura è un brutto segno, perché non hanno mai paura per niente. Something has frightened the beast, said I. I shall just go and see what it was. And was about to jump down when I felt Ralph Thurston's great hand on my arm. It was a powerful grip. For the love of God, lad, stay where you are, he said in a frightened whisper. It's just here that my brother met his death for doing what you want to do now. Ok, quindi Thomas vorrebbe scendere a vedere cosa diavolo abbia spaventato il cavallo, ma il cocchiere lo ferma, proprio lo afferra per la spalla con la sua manona forte e gli dice: per carità, non scenda perché mio fratello è morto così. Ok, proprio per aver voluto controllare cosa aveva spaventato il cavallo. Sì, mi sa che a questo punto a Thomas è completamente passato l'appetito. What? For walking up to that fence and seeing what trifle frightened the skittish horse? And they looked at the fence intently. There was nothing to be seen but a straggling boat of an elder bush which had forced its way through a chink in the rotten wood and was waving in the wind. Ok, quindi quindi Thomas dice: ma come? Cioè, rischio di morire perché voglio andare a quel diavolo di recinto a vedere cosa ha spaventato il cavallo? E l'unica cosa che lui vede al momento è un ramo che è agitato dal vento e giustamente batte e fa rumore. Finding that the man was really frightened as well as the horse, I humored him. He still held my arm. There is no need for anyone to go closer to see the cause of poor Timothy's fear, I said, laughing. If you will look, Mr. Thurston, you will see what it was. No, lad, no! Oh, I'm not going to turn my face towards the devil and his works. Lord, have mercy upon us. Christ, have mercy upon us, our Father which art in heaven. Ok, quindi il povero cocchiere all'idea di andare a vedere cosa abbia spaventato il cavallo, addirittura si mette a pregare e a chiedere pietà al cielo. Ok. And he repeated the whole prayer with emphasis, slowness, and with his eyes closed. I sat still and amazed the witness of his state of mind. When he had said Amen, he opened his eyes, and looking down at the horse, who seemed to have recovered, as I judged by his putting his head down to graze, he gave a low whistle, and tightening the reins once more, Timothy allowed himself to be driven forward. Thurston kept his face away from the enclosure on his right hand and looked steadily at Timothy. I gave another glance towards the innocent elder oaf, but what was my astonishment to see where it had been, or seemed to be, the figure of a man with a drawn sword in his hand. Ok, quindi finalmente il cavallo si calma, il cocchiere lo porta vicino alla casa, il nostro Thomas, il nostro giovane gentiluomo, continua a guardare nella direzione dove ha visto il ramo che batteva agitato dal vento, ma a quel punto in quella direzione lui vede un uomo con una spada in mano. Che non fosse soltanto un ramo? Boh, chissà. Stop, Thurston, stop, I cried. There is somebody there. I see a man with a sword. Look, turn back and I'll soon see what he is doing here. Ok, quindi giustamente Thomas dice, ma come c'è questo qui con la spada in mano? Ma chi è? Cosa vuole? No, never turn back to meet the devil when you have once got past him. And Thurston drove on rapidly. But he may overtake you, I cried, laughing. But I looked back, I saw that a pursuit was not intended, for the figure I had seen was gone. Ok, quindi l'uomo con la spada è sparito. I'll pay a visit to that devil tomorrow, I added. I shall not harbor such a game in my preserves. Lord's sake, don't talk like that, Master Winmore, whispered Thurston. We're just coming to the gate. Maybe they may strike Timothy dead. Ok, quindi va avanti questo dialogo tra Thomas, che vuole agire da razionale padrone di casa e dare una lezione a questo sconosciuto che viene a giocare così con la spada vicino alla sua proprietà, e il cocchiere che sembrerebbe molto superstizioso, ma forse ha ragione. Scusate, devo abbassare un attimo il volume della musica di sottofondo perché così è veramente alto. Decisamente meglio. Decisamente meglio, ok. Hey, not the ghosts, surely. I looked through the great gate as we passed and saw the whole front of the house. Why, Mr. Thurston, you said no one lived in the old hall. Look, there are lights in the windows. Ok, quindi, anche se in quella villa non dovrebbe vivere nessuno, ci sono luci alla finestra. Chi sarà mai? Hey, I thought you would see them, he said in a terrified whisper without turning his head. Why? Look at them yourself, cried I, pointing to the house. God forbid, he exclaimed, and he gave Timothy a stroke with the whip that sent him flying past the rest of the garden of the hall. Ok, quindi non si può guardare verso il recinto, non si può guardare verso le luci alla finestra, non si può guardare, va bene? Non si può guardare. Scusate che controllo una cosa. No. What forbidden, exclaimed. Our ground rose again, and in a few minutes a good view of the place was obtained. I looked back at it with vivid interest. No lights were to be seen now, no moving thing. The black windows contrasted with the grey walls, and the grey chimneys with the black clouds, as when the police first appeared to me. The moon now rose above a dark hill on our left. Ok, sorge anche la luna, non poteva mancare. Thurston allowed Timothy to slacken his speed, and turning around his head, he also looked back at Winmore Hall. We are safe enough now, he said. The only dangerous time is betwixt sunset and moonrise, when people are passing close to the accursed old place. Ok, quindi, sentendo il cocchiere, loro hanno già scampato il pericolo perché... Scusate, stavo guardando chi era il mio seguito. Ciao Marwa, stavo giusto guardando che mi stavi seguendo. Quindi a quanto pare, secondo il cocchiere, lui e il giovane padrone di casa hanno appena scampato il pericolo. È passata l'ora pericolosa, l'ora degli spettri, l'ora del diavolo, quel che è. Mm-hmm. About a mile further, the barking of a house dog indicated that we were approaching Mr. Earls. The driver stopped at the small wicket gate leading into a shrubbery, got down and invited me to do the same. He then fastened Timothy to the gatepost. The garden and the house have nothing to do with my present tale and are far too dear to me to be flung in as an episodical adornment. They form the scenery of the romantic part of my own life, for Miss Earle became my wife a few years after this first visit to Winmore. Così finalmente il nostro Thomas va a casa del signor Earle, che presuppongo sia il custode, e ci racconta che la signorina Earle sarebbe in futuro diventata sua moglie. Oh, che dolce! I saw her at that evening and forgot Ralph Thurston, the old hall, its ghosts and mysterious lights. However, the next morning I was forced back to this workaday world in her father's study. I heard Mr. Earle's account of my property. Ok, un attimino ragazzi. Ok, Squire Earle, no, invece è il vicino. All the land was farmed by himself except the few acres around the hall, which no one would take because it was not worth tillage and because of the evil name of the house itself. Quindi alla fine Mr. Earle, il signor Earle, è quello che fa coltivare la terra di Thomas, e gli racconta un po' come vanno le cose. Dice che una parte della proprietà è abbandonata perché nessuno avrebbe mai osato prendersela, sia perché la terra era povera, sia perché aveva fama di essere infestata. Ok. I suppose you know why no tenant can be found for the hall since Ralph Thurston drove you over? Yes, I said, smiling, but I could get no rational account from him. What is this nonsense about ghosts and lights? Who lives in the hall? No one, my good fellow. Why, you would not get the stoutest man in the parish, and that's Thurston, to get into the house after sunset, much less live in it. Ok, quindi anche il signor Earle, quello che si occupa delle terre di Thomas in sua assenza, dice: guarda che nemmeno il più coraggioso di questa parrocchia, che poi è il cocchiere, si oserebbe mai entrare in quella villa dopo il tramonto e men che meno viverci. But I have seen lights in some of the windows myself. Ma ho visto le luci alle finestre. Mamma mia, Thomas, come insisti? Ma sarà la luna che ci riflette sopra. Che stress. Oh, so have I replied. Do you mean to say that no human beings make use of the house in virtue of the superstition about it? Tricks of this kind are not uncommon. At the risk of seeming foolish in your eyes, I must reply that I believe no human beings now living have any hand in the operations which go on in Winmore Hall. Mr. Earle looked perfectly grave as he said this. Ciao Simona, fra l'altro. I saw a man with a sword in his hand start from a part of the fence. I think he frightened our horse. I too have seen the figure you speak of, but I do not think he is a living man. What do you suppose it to be? I asked in amazement. For Mr. Earle was no ignorant or weak-minded person. He had already impressed me with real respect for his character and intellect. He smiled at my impetuous tone. Ok, quindi Thomas in breve sta raccontando al signor Earle tutto quello che ha visto. Sì, ma ho visto uno con la spada e oltre alle luci e alle finestre. E il signor Earle dice: guarda che mi sa che non è una persona in carne ed ossa. Sì, è vero, ne ho ricevuti tanti, grazie davvero. Ok. E a questo punto Thomas gli chiede: beh, se non è una persona in carne ed ossa, che cos'è? He smiled at my impetuous tone. I live apart from what is called the world, said he. Grace and I are not polite enough to think everything which we cannot account for either impossible or ridiculous. 10 years ago, I myself was a new resident in this county, and wishing to improve your property, I determined to occupy the old hall myself. I had it prepared for my family. No mechanic would work about the place after sunset. However, I brought all my servants from a distance, and took care that they should have no intercourse with any neighbor for the first 3 days. On the third evening, they all came to me and said that they must leave the next morning. All but Grace's nurse, who had been her mother's attendant and was attached to the family. She told me that she did not think it safe for the child to remain another night and that I must give her permission to take her away. Ok, cosa succede? Allora il signor Earle, vedendo il giovane gentiluomo Thomas così agitato, così incredulo anche, gli dice: allora, guardi, signor Thomas, anch'io quando sono appena arrivato qui ho deciso di andare a vivere nella villa padronale e la stavo anche facendo ristrutturare. Siccome nessun operaio del posto avrebbe mai osato andarci a lavorare dentro, ho assunto io operai che non erano del posto, ho impedito loro di parlare con la gente del paese perché non si mettessero in testa strane storie, ma pure loro sono scappati tutti e hanno detto soprattutto che non volevano rimanere nella villa di sera. Persino la nutrice di mia figlia, che è molto legata alla famiglia, aveva detto che non riteneva sicuro per la bambina rimanere nella villa padronale e mi ha chiesto il permesso di portarsela da un'altra parte. Quindi insomma è una cosa seria. Scusate un attimo. Bon, ok. Ciao prof, ciao. Volevo capire una cosa, ragazzi, ma se voi entrate su invito questa live, poi figurate come co-streamer insieme a me, cioè se siete anche voi in streaming o semplicemente spettatori come gli altri. Ecco, prendetevi pure il vostro tempo per rispondere. Cosa c'è da piangere? Perché piangi? Cosa c'è? Vabbè, niente, io intanto vado avanti. What did you do? Said I. Asked for some accounts of the things that had frightened them. Of course I heard some wild and exaggerated tales, but the main phenomena related were what I myself had seen and heard, in which I was as fully determined as they were not to see and hear again, or to let my child have a chance of encountering. I told them so candidly, and at the same time declared that it was my belief God's providence or punishment was at work in that old house, as everywhere else in creation, and not for the devil's mischievous hand. Once more I made a rigorous search for secret devices and means for producing the sights and sounds which so many had heard and seen, but without any discovery, and before sunset that afternoon that hall was cleared of all human occupants, and so it has remained until this day. Così anche il signor Earl a suo tempo ha fatto delle indagini per vedere se ci fosse qualche spiegazione scientifica dei fenomeni che accadevano nella casa, dei suoni e delle visioni di cui gli operai e la nutrice erano stati testimoni. Non ha trovato niente. Quindi lui e gli altri testimoni, e lui e i testimoni dei fatti si sono dati una spiegazione religiosa, hanno detto: qui c'è la mano di Dio o magari anche quella del diavolo, e tutti hanno abbandonato la villa. Certo che mi ricordo della seconda C di Verola Nuova, e come farei a dimenticarmene? Okay, will you tell me the things you saw and heard? You had better see and hear them for yourself. We have plenty of time before sunset. I can show you over the whole house, and if your courage holds good, I will leave you there to pass an hour or so between sunset and moonrise. You can come back here when you like, and if you are in a condition to hear and care to hear the story which peoples your old hall with horrors, I will tell it you. Quindi il signor Earl dice a Thomas: molto bene, se tu non vuoi ancora credermi, io ti farò visitare tutta la villa e ti lascerò anche lì dopo il tramonto. Dopo il tramonto. Ciao, buongiorno. E ti lascerò anche lì dopo il tramonto se hai il cuore di rimanerci dentro. Thank you, said I. Will you lend me a gun and pistols to assist me in my investigations? Surely. And taking down the weapons I had pointed out, he began to examine them. You want them loaded? Certainly, and with bullets. I am not going to play. Mr. Earl loaded both gun and pistols. I put the letter into my pocket and we left the room by the window. Grace Earl met us on a moor, riding a shaggy pony. Where are you going so near dinner time? She asked. Mr. Winmore is going to look at the old hall. And his gun? She asked, smiling. I want to shoot vermin there. She looked as if she were about to say something eagerly, but checked herself and rode slowly away. I looked after her and wondered what she was going to say. Perhaps she wished to prevent me from going. Ok, quindi arriva anche Grace Earl, la futura moglie di Thomas, nonché la figlia del signor Earl, che se ne arriva dalla brughiera cavalcando il suo pony e chiede cosa stiano andando a fare quei due. Sì, mi ricordo anche della seconda D di Verola Nuova, però, caro Sbaruz, dovresti spiegarmi come ti chiami tu al secolo, perché io di sicuro non ti chiamavo così in classe. Mi mancano i suoi 9 e 10 in storia. No, i 9 e 10 sono tuoi, devi essere tu a prendere i voti, non l'insegnante a darteli. Poi beh, magari questo anno è anche un filino più difficile. Allora, se tu eri in seconda media ai tempi in cui ti insegnavo io, tu adesso sei in prima superiore, giusto? E ciao, è un altro discorso. È tutto un altro discorso proprio. Quindi anche la ragazza, anche la povera Grace vorrebbe dire qualcosa quando vede suo padre e il suo futuro marito andarsene armati nella villa infestata, ma niente, si tiene la lingua fra i denti, non dice niente perché probabilmente sa che sarebbe inutile. Presently we stood before the great iron gate of Winmore. Mr. Earl took 2 keys from his pocket. With one he unlocked the gate, with the other the chief door. There were no other fastenings. These were very rusty and were moved with difficulty. People don't get in this way, said I. This is clear? Ok, quindi la serratura del cancello della villa è completamente arrugginita. È chiaro che nessun essere vivente ci è entrato, perlomeno non da quella parte. The garden was a sad wilderness, and grass grew on the broad steps which led up to the door. Abbiamo già detto che il giardino è completamente inselvatichito. As soon as we had crossed the threshold, I felt the influence of that desolate dwelling creep over my spirits. There was a cold stagnation in the air, a deathly stillness, a murky light in the old rooms that was indescribably depressing. All the lower windows had their pierced shutters fastened, and cobwebs and dust adorned them plentifully. Yet I could have sworn I saw lights in 2 at least of these lower windows. I said so to my companion. He replied, yes, it was in this very room you saw a light, I dare say. This is one in which I have seen lights myself. But I do not wish you to spoil my dinner by seeing anything supernatural now. We will leave it and I will hasten to the ladies' bedchamber and dressing room, where the apparitions and noises are most numerous. Quindi Thomas e il signor Earl passano vicino alla stanza che Thomas stesso ha vista illuminata e il signor Earl dice: tiriamo avanti, non entriamo qui, che non ho voglia di vedere cose strane, andiamo a quella che è stata la camera da letto, andiamo alla camera da letto della signora, che pare essere una di quelle più infestate. I followed him, but cast a glance round the room before I shut the door carefully. It was partly furnished like a library, but on one side was a bed, and beside it an easy chair. What name is given to this room? It looks ominous of some evil deed, I said. It is called the Old Squire's Murder Room, by the people who know the story connected with it. Ah, I said, then I may look for a ghost there. Ok, quindi la famosa stanza che è stata vista illuminata dal di fuori viene chiamata la stanza del delitto. Ok, direi che non ha bisogno di spiegazioni. You will perhaps see one or more if you stay long enough, said Mr. Earl with the utmost composure. This way. I followed him along a gallery on the first floor to the door of a room. He opened it and we entered what had been apparently one of the principal bedrooms. It was a regular ladies' chamber of the 17th century, with dark plumes waving on the top of the bed pillars of black oak. Quindi è tutto nero, ci sono decorazioni in piume nere, il letto è in quercia nera. The messy toilette, with its oval looking glass set in silver and shrouded in all the lace, the carved chairs and lofty mantelpiece, gave an air of quaint elegance to the dignity of the apartment. Quindi una stanza elegante ma trascurata. I had but little time to examine the objects here, for Mr. Earl had passed on to an inner room, which was reached by ascending a short flight of steps. Come up here, cried a voice which did not sound like Mr. Earl's. I ran up the stairs and I found him alone in a small room which contained little less than an escritoire, a cabinet and two great chairs. Quindi Mr. Earl, il signor Earl, fa entrare Thomas in una stanza che sembra essere stata una specie di studio. Ha uno scrittoio, un armadietto e due sedie. On one side, a large Parisian-looking glass a la Régence was fixed on the wall. Quindi c'è anche un vasto specchio francese. The branches for lights still held some yellow bits of wax candle covered with dust. I joined Mr. Earl, who was looking through the window over a vast expanse of mountainous moorland. What a grand prospect! I exclaimed. I like these two rooms very much. I shall certainly come and live here. Ok, quindi in questa stanza, che sembrerebbe essere uno studio, c'è una finestra con una bellissima vista sulla brughiera e Thomas è entusiasta, dice addirittura: no, mi piacciono queste stanze, voglio venirci a vivere. You shall tell me your opinion about that tomorrow, said Mr. Earl. I must go now. Quindi il signor Earl dice: sì, vediamo domani se sarai ancora dello stesso parere, se vorrai ancora vivere qui. Io intanto devo andare. Concealing as much as possible the contempt I felt for his absurd superstition, I accompanied him downstairs again. Are these the only rooms worth looking at? I asked. No, most of the rooms are good enough for a gentleman's household. The rooms I have shown you, and the passages and staircase which lead from one to the other, are the only portions of the house in which you are subjected to annoyance. I have slept in both the rooms and advise no one else to do so. Ok. Ok, quindi Thomas dice: ma non ci sono altre stanze da visitare? E il signor Earl gli risponde: in realtà tutte le stanze di questa villa sono perfette per un gentiluomo come lei, però io le ho fatto vedere quelle dalle quali può arrivarle qualche fastidio. Ci ho dormito Ho dormito io in tutte e due quelle stanze, dice il signor Earl, e avviserei chiunque e avvertirei chiunque di non farlo. You had bad dreams? I asked with an involuntary smile. As I took my gun from the hall table where I had left it. Ovviamente, come avete sentito prima, il signor Earl e Thomas sono entrati armati, visto che si aspettano qualche genere di aggressione. As you please, said Mr. Earl, smiling also. I stretched out my hand to him when he stood at the gate together. Good night, said I. I think I shall sleep in one of those rooms and return to you in the morning. Mr. Earl shook his head. We'll be back at my house within 3 hours, Tom Winmore. So, au revoir. He strode away over the moor. His fine figure appeared almost gigantic as it moved between me and the setting sun. That does not look like a man who should be a prey to weak superstition, any more than a good Ralph Thurston, who drove home alone willingly enough past this same gate and fence at 9 o'clock last night. The witching hour, it seems, is just after sunset. Well, it wants a quarter of an hour of that now. I continued, thinking silently. There will be time enough for me to explore the garden a little before I return to the house and wait for my evening's entertainment. Quindi il signor Earl se ne va e dice: sì, signor Thomas, lei vuole venire a vivere qui, ma secondo me fra 3 ore si ritrova a casa mia. Buonanotte. E intanto Thomas rimane a riflettere, dice: ma a me il signor Earl non sembra un tipo da superstizioni, anche il cocchiere mi sembrava uno coi piedi per terra. Chissà, poi l'ora delle streghe è solo dopo il tramonto, quindi ho ancora un po' di tempo per esplorare il giardino prima di venire qui nella casa a vedere gli spettacoli pirotecnici, diciamo. As I walked through the shrubbery, I recollected the figure I had seen outside the fence on the previous evening. I must find out how that trick is managed, thought I, and if I get a chance, I will certainly wing that ghost pour encourager les autres. Ascertaining, as well as I was able, the part of the shrubbery near which I saw the man, I began to search for footsteps or marks of human ingenuity. I soon discovered the elder bush that had sent home of its branches through a hole in the fence. I crept around it and examined the fence. No plank was loose, though some boughs had grown through the hole. I could see no footstep except my own on the moist, dank, leafy mold. I got over the fence and saw marks outside, baffled and yet suspicious. I went back and continued my walk, in the course of which I came upon sundry broken and decayed summer houses and seats. In the tangled flower garden on the southwest side were a few rich blossoms growing amicably with the vilest weeds. I tore up a great root of hemlock to get at a branch of Providence rose, and then, seeing that the sun had disappeared below the opposite fell, I pursued my course and arrived again at the broad gravel path leading from the gate to the hall door. Quindi, oltre a visitare il giardino, Thomas pensa bene di fare lo Sherlock Holmes della situazione e cercare le impronte di umani. Bene, non le trova solo le sue, quelle che lui ha lasciato quella stessa sera. Ebbene, quindi si decide a ritornare verso l'ingresso della villa. Both stood open as I had left them. I lingered on the grass-grown steps to look at the last rays of the sun, reddening the heather on the distant fell. As I leaned on my gun, enjoying the profound stillness of this place, far from all sounds of village or wood or sea, a stillness that seemed to deepen and deepen into unearthly intensity, the charm was broken by a human voice speaking near me. The tone was hollow and full of agony. Bring me a light! Bring me a light! Quindi, mentre il nostro Thomas comincia a tornare verso il cancello, verso l'ingresso della villa, comincia a sentire le voci. E questa voce cosa gli dice? Portami una luce! Portami una luce! È il titolo del racconto. It was like a sick or dying man. The voice came, I thought, from the room next to me on the right hand of the hall. I rushed into the house and to the door of that room. It was the first which Mr. Earl had shown me. Ok, indovinate un po' da dove viene questa voce di uomo moribondo. Voce di uomo moribondo che lo sta pregando di portargli una luce. Sì, viene dalla stanza detta la stanza del delitto. Ma come avrete fatto a indovinarlo? I remember shutting the door. It now stood wide open, and there was a sound of hurried footsteps within. Ok, quindi Thomas corre verso quella stanza, si ricordava di averla chiusa, la trova spalancata e sente anche suono di passi dentro la stanza. Who is there? I shouted. No answer came, but there passed by me, as it were, in the very doorway, the figure of a young and, as I could see at a glance, very beautiful woman. Oh wow! Lui aveva sentito la voce di un uomo moribondo, invece si trova davanti una bellissima donna. Oh, le sorprese a volte. A me queste cose non succedono mai. Stavamo dicendo, when she moved onwards, I could not choose but follow, trembling with an undefinable fear, yet borne on by a mystic attraction. Quindi ovviamente quando vede la bella donna cosa fa? La segue, no? At the foot of the stairs, she turned on me again and smiled and beckoned me with an upraised arm, whereon great jewels flashed in the gloom. Quindi lei, arrivata ai piedi delle scale, si gira verso di lui, gli fa un sorrisone, gli fa vedere il braccio pieno di gioielli. Wow! I followed her quickly, but could not overtake her. My limbs, I am not ashamed to say it, shook with strange fear, and I could not turn back from following that fair form. Ok, quindi lui comincia un attimo a sentirsi tremolare le gambe, però corre, no? Dietro alla bella donna. Onward she led me, up the stairs and through the gallery to the door of the lady's chamber. Quindi la donna, questa bellissima donna, lo guida fino a quella che abbiamo chiamato stanza della signora, no? There she paused a moment and again turned her bewitching face, radiant with smiles, upon me before she disappeared within the dark doorway. I followed into the room and saw her stand before the antique toilet and arrange in her bosom a spray of roses, the very spray that I had so lately pulled in the garden, it seemed. Then she kissed her hand to me and glided to the narrow stairs that led to the little room above. Quindi questa figura di donna va al tavolo da toeletta, si prende le rose che Thomas ha appena raccolto nel giardino, se le mette sul petto e gli manda anche un bacio, cioè grazie dei fiori, insomma, come Nilla Pizzi. E poi prende la scaletta che porta alla stanzetta sotto, no? Then came a loud, haughty voice, the voice of a woman accustomed to command. It sounded from the little room above, and it could not be the voice of that fair girl, I felt sure. It said, "Bring me a light! Bring me a light!" Ok, quindi dalla stanzetta di sotto arriva una voce, stavolta di donna, una donna che comanda, e che dice, portatemi una luce, portatemi una luce. E non sembra essere la voce della bella ragazza. I shuddered at the sound. I knew not why, but I stood there still. I then saw the figure of an old female servant rise from a chair by one of the windows. She approached the toilet, and there I saw her light two tapers with her breath, as it seemed. Quindi arriva la figura di un'anziana inserviente, soffia su quelle che dovrebbero essere le candele e col suo fiato le accende. Chissà cosa aveva mangiato, ecco, non so, peperonata con le cipolle. Boh. Niente, scherzi a parte. Bring me a light, was repeated in an angry tone from the upper room. The old woman passed rapidly to the stairs. Thither I followed in obedience to a sign from her, and mounting to the top, saw into the room. The beautiful girl stood in the center, with her costly lace gown sweeping the floor, and her bright curls drooping to the waist. Her back was towards me, but I could see her innocent, sweet face in the great glass. What a lovely, happy face it was! Behind her stood another lady, taller and more majestic. She pretended to caress her, but her proud eyes, unseen by the young lady, brightened with triumphant malice. Quindi Thomas segue la vecchia inserviente al piano di sotto lungo la scaletta e arriva a una stanza in cui in effetti ci sono due donne, una è la sua bella e l'altra è questa signora imponente che fa finta di trattare bene la bella ragazza, ma che ha negli occhi una luce un po' strana, una luce di malizia trionfante, chissà cosa ha in mente. They danced gladly in the light of the taper which she took from the maid. God of heaven, can a woman look so wicked? I thought. Watch her, whispered a voice in my ear, a voice that stirred my hair. I did watch her. Would to God I could forget that vision. She, the woman, the fine, bent carefully to the floor as though to set right something amiss in the border of the fair bride's robe. I saw her lower the flame of the candle and set fire to the dress of the smiling, trusting girl. Here I could move. She was enveloped in flames, and I heard her wild shrieks mingling with the low demoniac laughter of the murderers. Cioè, avete capito? Quindi la donna altera, quella con la malizia negli occhi, ha preso la candela per dare fuoco al vestito della ragazza, e la povera ragazza ha preso fuoco. Ma vi giuro, io ho sognato una storia del genere una volta, solo che nel mio sogno la gonna della ragazza in realtà non riusciva a prendere fuoco e il suo assassino se ne andava, peraltro con il rimorso di averla uccisa mentre lei era ancora viva. Vabbè, divagazione. Quindi insomma la donna altera che ha chiesto una luce, che ha chiesto una candela, l'ha usata per uccidere la povera ragazza in un modo atroce. Ma è pazzesco. E ovviamente l'assassina ride con la voce diabolica, tipo da cattiva dei film, no? I remember suddenly raising the gun in my hand and firing at the horrid apparition. Quindi ovviamente cosa fa Thomas? È il pistolero. Siccome è venuto con la pistola carica, la punta contro l'assassina. E cosa succederà? But still she laughed and pointed with mocking gestures to the flames and the writhing figure they enveloped. I ran forward to extinguish them. My arms struck against the wall and I fell down insensible. Ok, quindi Thomas punta la pistola, l'assassina manco lo vede, va avanti a ridere, lui corre perché vorrebbe soccorrere la ragazza che sta bruciando, picchia contro un muro e perde conoscenza. When I recovered my senses, I found myself lying on the floor of that little room, with the bright cold moon looking in on me. I waited without moving, listening for some more of those demon sounds. All was still. I rose, went to the window. The moon was high in heaven, and all the great moor seemed light as day. Quando lui si sveglia dallo svenimento, la stanza è vuota, c'è solo la luce della luna che entra dalla finestrella e tutto è silenzioso. The air of that room was stifling. I turned and fled. Hastily I ran down those few steps, quicker yet through the great chamber and out into the gallery. As I began to go down the stairs, I saw a figure coming up. Ok, finalmente, quando lui comincia a scendere le scale, vede qualcun altro. I was now a very coward. Cioè, Thomas, che finora ha fatto i sorrisetti all'idea di queste superstizioni sui fantasmini, comincia a sentire la strizza pesante, ci credo, con quel che ha visto. Grasping the banister with one hand and feeling for the unused pistol with the other, I called out, "Who are you?" And with stupid terror, I fired at the thing without pausing. Ok, quindi si comincia a gridare e a sparare verso la figura, stavolta. It was a slight cry, a very human one, then a little laugh. Don't fire any more pistols at me, Mr. Wilmore. I'm not a ghost. Quindi, una volta che lui ha sparato, si sente rispondere: per favore non mi spari, signor Wilmore, io non sono un fantasma. A parte il fatto che non so esattamente a cosa serva sparare a un fantasma, visto che i fantasmi sono già morti, ma ok. Something in the voice sent the blood once more coursing through my veins. Is it I could not utter another word. It is I, Grace Earl! Sono io, Grace Earl! Ok, la sua futura fidanzata l'ha raggiunto nella casa. What brought you here? I said at length, after I had descended the stairs and had seized her hand, that I might feel sure it was of flesh and blood. My pony, we began to get uneasy about you. It is nearly midnight, so Papa and I set off to see what you were doing. Ok, quindi la ragazza, la figlia del signor Earl, è andata a vedere come se la stesse passando Thomas nella casa. Era preoccupata per lui. What the devil are you firing at, Winmore? Asked Mr. Earl, coming hurriedly from a search in the lower rooms. Ok, quindi a questo punto arriva anche il signor Earl che era lì con la figlia. Dice, cioè, a chi stavi sparando? A chi stava sparando, signor Winmore? All at me, Papa, answered his daughter archly, glancing up at my face. But he's a bad shot, for he didn't hit me. Sì, papà stava sparando contro di me, ma una mira da schifo, non mi ha beccato. Ok. Beata lei che ha voglia di ridere in una situazione del genere. Thank God, I ejaculated. Miss Earl, I was mad. No, only very frightened. Look at him, Papa. Mr. Earl looked at me. He took my arm. Why? Winmore, you don't look the better for seeing the spirits of your ancestors. However, I see it is no longer a joking matter with you. You do not wish to take up your abode here immediately. Ok, quindi Mr. Earl vede Thomas e gli dice, non è che vedere i fantasmi dei suoi antenati, signor Winmore, non le ha fatto tanto bene, Vedo che adesso non scherza più. I rallied under their kindly badinage. Let me get out of this horrible place, said I. Mr. Earl led me beyond the gate. I leaned against it in a state of exhaustion. Here, try your hand at my other pocket pistol, said Mr. Earl, as he put a precious flask of that kind to my lips. After a second application of the remedy, I was decidedly better. Quindi il signor Earl fa bere a Thomas un po' di cordiale, un liquore medicinale, così lui comincia a sentirsi meglio. Miss Earl mounted her pony and we set off across the moor. I was very silent, and my companions talked a little with each other. My mind was too confused to recollect just then all that I had experienced during my stay in the house, and I wished to arrange my thoughts and compose my nerves before I conversed with Mr. Earl on the strange visions of that night. I excused myself to my host and his daughter in the best way I could. After taking a slice of bread and a glass of water, I went to bed. Ok, quindi il signor Earl e sua figlia Grace recuperano il povero Thomas dalla villa infestata, se lo portano a casa, gli danno qualcosa da mangiare e lui finalmente se ne va a dormire. The next day I rose late, but in my right mind. I was much shocked to think of the cowardly fear which had led me to fire a pistol at Miss Earl. I began my interview with my host by uttering some expressions of this feeling, but it was an awkward thing to declare myself a fool and a coward. Quindi la mattina dopo Thomas, quando ormai non ha più addosso la paura, si vergogna anche un pochino di aver fatto la figura del fifone la notte prima, lui che era così baldanzoso, ma non sa come dirlo ai suoi ospiti. The less we say about that, the better, said her father gravely. Fear is the strongest human passion, my boy, and will lead us to commit the vilest acts if we let it get the mastery. Quindi il signor Earl dice, no, lasciamo stare, non parliamone, perché se no aumentiamo solo la paura, e la paura ci porta a fare le cose peggiori, le più vili. I acknowledge that I was beside myself with terror at the sights and sounds of that accursed house. I was not saying at the moment I saw your daughter, I shall never. Winmore, she hopes you will never mention it again. We certainly shall not. Now, if you are disposed to hear the story of your ancestors' evil deeds, I am ready to fulfill the promise I made you last night. I see you know too much now to think me a fool for believing my own senses and keeping clear of disagreeable creatures that will not trouble themselves about me. I don't raise the question of what they are or how they exist, nor even whether they exist at all. It is sufficient that they appear, and that by their appearance they put a stop to normal human life. You may be a philosopher and may find some means of banishing these supernatural horrors. I shall like you nonetheless if you can do what I cannot. I will try. Will you tell the story? Yes, if you will take a cigar with me at first. After we had composed ourselves comfortably before the fire in his study, Mr. Earl began. Quindi finalmente il signor Earl racconta a Thomas cosa hanno combinato i suoi antenati per trasformarsi in fantasmi e infestare la villa. Al signor Earl non interessa neanche capire se siano fantasmi, che cosa siano, se esistano davvero, cioè, gli interessa solo tenerli a distanza. Basta. Ormai li ha visti e sa che non può ricavarne niente di buono. Ciao Saverio, fra l'altro. How long ago, I can't exactly find out, but sometime between the Reformation and the Great Rebellion, the Wigmores settled in this part of the county and owned a large tract of land. They were of gentle blood and most ungentle manners, for they quarrelled with everyone and carried themselves in an insolent fashion to the simple below them and to the noble above. Ok, quindi gli antenati di Thomas Winmore sono arrivati nella villa tra la Riforma e la Grande Ribellione, che se non erro è il periodo tra 500 e 600, quindi tra la Riforma anglicana e la Grande Ribellione contro la monarchia. Quindi è una famiglia antica, una famiglia di sangue nobile, ma di maniera assai meno nobili. Litigavano con tutti, erano molto violenti e così via. The Winmores were iron-handed and iron-hearted, staunch Catholics and staunch Jacobites during the religious and political dissensions of the end of the 17th and beginning of the 18th centuries. Ok, quindi no, ho sbagliato di un secolo, scusate, su alcune nozioni sono un po' arrugginita. Quindi gli Winmore, originari, i capostipiti della famiglia, sono arrivati nella villa tra 600 e 700 e viene precisato che erano cattolicissimi, addirittura no, non lo voglio tradurre dall'inglese perché in questo momento non ne ho la certezza, comunque cattolici in un'Inghilterra che era ormai anglicana. Quindi già il fatto che loro fossero rimasti fedeli alla Chiesa del Papa, alla Chiesa di Roma, era una cosa che per gli inglesi dell'epoca bastava qualificarli come diabolici, come se non fosse bastato il loro caratteraccio. After the establishment of Protestantism in the reigns of William III and Anne, the position of the proud house of Winmore was materially altered. Quindi, visto che ormai la monarchia è una monarchia anglicana, la posizione di questa famiglia cattolica cambia decisamente, perché non si è convertita alla religione del sovrano. The cadets went early into foreign service as soldiers and priests, and the firstborn remained at home to keep up a blighted dignity. After the establishment of the Hanoverian dynasty, the Winmores of Winmore ceased to take any part in public affairs. They were too proud to farm their own land, and putting trust in a nefarious steward, the Winmore, who reigned at the Hall when King George II reigned over England, was compelled to keep up appearances by selling half the family estate. Quindi gli Winmore cattolici sotto una monarchia anglicana gradualmente decadono. I loro eredi se ne vanno all'estero, qualcuno nell'esercito, qualcuno come prete. La parte della famiglia che rimane in Inghilterra si fida di un maggiordomo non molto affidabile, un maggiordomo quindi un amministratore non molto affidabile, e anche la ricchezza della famiglia comincia a calare. Tra l'altro era una famiglia troppo orgogliosa per coltivare le sue stesse terre, quindi anche le terre, anche l'agricoltura nelle proprietà degli Winmore va a rotoli. The Winmore in question, the old squire, quindi quel Winmore che è stato assassinato nella stanza del delitto, as the people call him, was a melancholy man, not much blessed in the matrimonial lottery. His wife, Lady Henrietta Winmore, was the daughter of a poor Catholic earl. Tradition says she was equally beautiful and proud, and I believe it. Ok, quindi quell'antenato di Thomas che è stato assassinato nella stanza del delitto era un tipo molto malinconico, chiuso in se stesso, anche abbastanza sfortunato quanto matrimonio, perché ha sposato una signora molto graziosa, ma figlia di un povero conte cattolico, quindi di un nobile in decadenza perché non era ben visto dal sovrano per la sua religione. Quindi non solo gli Winmore ormai sono abbastanza poveri per essere dei signori, ma anche con il matrimonio questo Winmore non ha avuto molto da guadagnare. Questa sua moglie, Lady Henrietta Winmore, comunque sembra essere molto bella e molto orgogliosa. Una vera signora, diremmo noi. To return, this couple had only one child, a son. When Lady Henrietta found that her husband was a gentleman of a mobile and unenterprising turn of mind, she could not persuade him to compromise his principle and so find favor with the new government. She devoted herself to the education of her son, Graham. Quindi la coppia Winmore, Lady Henrietta e suo marito, hanno solo un figlio, Graham. Lady Henrietta vorrebbe che suo marito lasciasse perdere un po' le questioni di principio e cominciasse a ingraziarsi il governo, ma no, lui no, è testardo. E allora lei che cosa fa? Niente, si butta anima e corpo nell'educazione di suo figlio. As he was a clever boy with strong health and good looks, she determined that he should retrieve the fortunes of the family. She kept him under her superintendence till he was 10 years of age. She then sent him to Eton with his cousin, the little Earl of... it's not said. No. He was brought up a Protestant, and thus the civil disabilities of the family would be removed. Quindi Graham, dopo essere stato educato da sua madre, dopo aver fatto homeschooling, come si dice oggi, educazione parentale, viene mandato a Eton, al college di Eton, e viene educato come protestante, come anglicano. Quindi almeno lì quello che era il principale motivo di disaccordo tra gli Winmore e la casa reale, e il resto d'Inghilterra in generale, viene rimosso. He was early accustomed to the society of all ranks, to be found in a first-class English public school, and his personal gifts as well as his mental excellence helped to win him the good opinion of others. Graham came home from Oxford in his 23rd year, a first-class man. Quindi Graham cresce non solo protestante ma anche amato da tutti, un bravo ragazzo, un ragazzo intelligente. Dopo Eton, torna a casa dall'Università di Oxford a 23 anni e insomma sembrerebbe un giovane gentiluomo a cui nulla manca. Un perfetto giovane gentiluomo. Indeed, I exclaimed. I hope I am descended from him and that his good look will be a part of my inheritance. Quindi Thomas dice, spero di essere disceso da lui, di tutti i rami della sua famiglia, io spero di aver preso da lui e di essere anche bello come questo Graham Winmore. Is there any portrait of this fine young English gentleman of the olden time? A very good one. It is in my daughter's sitting room. We are both struck by your likeness to your grandfather, Graham Winmore. Ah, questo Graham Winmore è il nonno di Thomas, fantastico! E a quanto pare Thomas gli assomiglia anche molto. Oh, bene. I shall never take a first-class sight, but go on. When Graham returned home after his success at college, he found his sister a hopeless valetudinarian, who had brought down to his library because he thought himself too feeble to go up and down stairs. He showed a little emotion at sight of his son and seemed to be fast sinking to idiocy. His mother, on the contrary, was radiant with joy, and had made the old ruined house look its best to welcome the heir. For at that time the place was much dilapidated, and only a small portion was habitable. It is the part you saw yesterday, the south front. And Graham stayed at home for a month or two in repose after the fatigues of study. One afternoon, as he rode Home from a distant town, he paused on the top of Winmore Hill, which commands a good view of the Hall, the simple bareness of the great hills around, the antique beauty and retirement of the Hall, above all the sweet impressive stillness of the place, had often charmed Graham as a boy. Now he gazed with a far stronger feeling at it all. "It shall not be lost to me and my children," he vowed inwardly. "I will redeem the mortgage on the house. I will win back every acre of the old Winmore land. Yes, I will work for wealth, but I must lose no time or my opportunity will be gone." Quindi Graham Winmore, il nonno di Thomas, si era innamorato del posto in cui vivevano i suoi antenati e ha deciso di riscattare le terre andate perse dagli Winmore. He looked at the ruined part of the house and began to calculate the cost of rebuilding as he hastened forward. Ovviamente di questa proprietà perduta fa parte la famosa villa, quella dei fantasmi. As soon as he entered the house, he went to see his father, whom he had not seen that day. He found him in his bed, with the nurse asleep and the easy chair beside it. His father did not recognize him, and to Graham's mind looked very much changed since the previous day. He left the room in search of his mother, thinking, in spite of his love for her, that she neglected her duty as a wife. She should be beside him now, he thought. Still, he framed the best excuse he could for her then, for he loved and reverenced her. She was so strong-minded, so beautiful. Ok, quindi Lady Henrietta, la cara mamma di Graham, sembrerebbe non tenere molto al marito e Graham se ne stupisce dolorosamente, ma cerca anche di domandarsi perché. Above all, she loved him with such passion and devotion he had formed. Quindi Graham non osa dire a sua madre che lui ha intenzione di riscattare le proprietà perdute dagli Winmore. She was an aristocrat and a woman. She did not understand the mutation of things in that day. She would not believe that the best way to wealth and power was not through the court influence, but by commercial enterprise. Ok, perché Graham non ha il coraggio di dire a sua madre che lui vuole arricchirsi per riscattare la proprietà, perché per arricchirsi dovrebbe darsi al commercio. E il commercio era considerata un'attività indegna di un aristocratico. Sua madre, Henrietta, era esattamente quel tipo di nobildonna all'antica che non avrebbe mai sopportato di vedere suo figlio darsi agli sporchi affari, come avrebbe detto lei, ma Graham, essendo giovane, si rende conto che i tempi sono cambiati, non può più far carriera tramite il favore della corte, ma i big money, i veri soldi, il vero successo sta nel commercio. He went to her bedroom, the lady's chamber in which you were last night. Ok, ovviamente Graham va a trovare sua madre Henrietta, e Henrietta dov'è? Nella camera della signora. She was not there, and he was about to retreat when he heard her voice in anger speaking to someone in the dressing room or oratory above. Graham went towards the stairs and was met by an old female servant who was in his mother's confidence and acted as her maid and head nurse to his father. She came down in tears, murmuring, "I cannot bear it. It was you gave me the draught for him. I will send for a doctor." "A doctor, indeed? He wants no doctor," cried the angry mistress. And don't talk any more nonsense, my good woman, if you value your place." Ok, quindi Graham vede, anzi sente le voci della vecchia inserviente di sua madre arrivare dal piano di sopra. La vecchia inserviente sta dicendo dobbiamo chiamare un dottore per il padrone di casa, per suo marito che sta morendo. E la signora dice, lui non vuole dottori, non venir più a stressarmi con questa storia se tieni al tuo posto di lavoro. In her agitation, the woman did not see her young master and hastily left the room. Astonished at the woman's words, he slowly ascended the steps to the dressing room. He found his mother standing before the long looking glass, arrayed in a rich dress of old point lace, over a broad-caded petticoat, with necklace, bracelets and tiara of diamonds. Quindi la signora Henrietta, Lady Henrietta, sta davanti allo specchio con un abito di pizzo, gioielli da tutte le parti, addirittura una tiara in testa. Beh, sembrerebbe pronta per una grande serata, a corte. She looked very handsome, as her great eyes still flashed and her cheek was yet crimson with anger. Bella anche nella sua rabbia. Wow, fantastico questo cliché. She turned hastily at her son's foot, as her son's foot was heard on the topmost stair. When she saw who it was, her face softened with a smile. "You here, Graham? I have been wanting you. Read that." He could scarcely take his admiring eyes from the brilliant figure before him as he received the letter. It was addressed to his mother and came from his cousin, the Earl, informing her that he had obtained a certain post under government for Graham. Quindi mentre Graham è ancora lì ad ammirare la sua splendida la madre gli dà una lettera che viene da un suo cugino e questa lettera dice che lui ha trovato un posto presso il governo per Graham. She kissed him as he sat down after reading the letter. "There is your first step on fortune's ladder, my son. You are sure to rise." "I hope so, mother. But where are you going, decked out in the family diamonds and lace?" "Have you forgotten? To the ball at Lord Lieutenant's. You must dress quickly or we shall be late. Your cousin will be there and we must thank him for the letter." Ok, quindi Graham dice... Quindi Lady Henrietta dice al figlio: "Mamma mia, un posto presso il governo, ma questo è di sicuro il primo passo verso la tua ascesa sociale." Lui: "Vabbè, se lo dici tu, lo spero. Ma scusa mamma, cosa ci fai vestita così con tutti i gioielli di famiglia indosso?" E lei: "Ma come? Ma dobbiamo andare al ballo dal Lord Luogotenente, anzi vestiti in fretta che ci sarà là anche tuo cugino, dobbiamo ringraziarlo della lettera." "Yes, mother," he replied, "but we must refuse the place. I have other views." E adesso lui glielo dice, sta per dirglielo che lui non vuole fare carriera presso il governo. Aiuto! Lady Henrietta's brow darkened. "Mother, I have vowed to recover the estate of my ancestors. It will require a large fortune to do this. I cannot get a large fortune by dangling about the court. I am going to turn merchant." Gliel'ha detto, sì, che vuol fare il mercante per riscattare le proprietà di famiglia. Gliel'ha detto, no, Lady Henrietta non è contenta, no. Lady Henrietta stared at him in amazement. "You? My son become a merchant?" "Why not, mother? Sons of nobler houses have done so, and I have advantages that few have ever had. Listen, dear mother. I saved the life of a college friend who was drowning. His father is one of the wealthiest merchants in London, in all England. He wrote to tell me that if it suited my views and those of my family, he was ready to receive me at once as a junior partner in his firm. He had learned from his son that I wished to become rich, that I might buy back my ancestral estate. His offer puts it in my power to become rich in a comparatively short space of time. I intend to accept his munificent offer." Ok, quindi Graham cerca di far ragionare sua madre, dice: "No, ma guarda che ci sono i figli di famiglie molto più nobili della nostra che adesso sono mercanti. Io poi ho un'occasione d'oro, ho un amico a cui ho salvato la vita che vorrebbe che io diventassi socio della ditta di suo padre, ma è un'occasione d'oro, mamma, non lo capisci?" Lady Henrietta's proud bosom swelled, but there was something in her son's tone which made her feel that anger and persuasion were alike vain. After some minutes' silence, she said bitterly, "The world is changed indeed, Graham. If men of gentle blood can become traders and not lose their gentility." Ok, quindi la signora Henrietta non è contenta, ma cerca di prenderla con filosofia, dice: sì, il mondo è proprio cambiato, È proprio cambiato il mondo se dei nobiluomini possono darsi agli affari e rimanere gentiluomini. E lui: "They can, mother. And I do not think the world can be much changed in that particular. A man of gentle blood who is in very truth a gentleman cannot lose that distinction in any occupation. Come, good mother, give me a smile. I am about to go forth to win an inheritance. I shall fight with modern weapons, the pen and the ledger, instead of sword and shield." At that moment, hasty steps were heard in the chamber below, and the voice called, My lady, come quick! The squire is dying!" Ok, quindi il figlio dice, dai mamma, fammi un sorriso, cioè guadagnerò una fortuna e resterò comunque un gentiluomo, su, combatterò con armi nuove, la penna, il calamaio, invece che con la spada e con lo scudo. Però a quel punto arriva l'inserviente che dice che Lord Winmore sta morendo, il marito di Lady Henriette. Mother and son went fast to Mr. Winmore's room. They arrived in time to see the old man die. He pointed to her and cried with his last breath, "She did it! She did it!" Ok, quindi Lord Winmore moribondo accusa la moglie di averlo assassinato. Ta-ta-ta-ta, colpo di scena. Lady Henrietta sat beside his bed and listened to these incoherent words without any outward emotion. She watched the breath leave the body and then closed the eyes herself, until she kept up so without any outward emotion. She watched the breath leave the body lovingly tended by her son and the old servant. Così, Lady Henrietta non reagisce, si comporta come se le parole di suo marito moribondo fossero un delirio, gli chiude gli occhi lei stessa, però subito dopo la morte di suo marito lei cade ammalata. Forse non aveva la coscienza così pulita. I must now pass over 10 years. Before the end of that time, Graham Winmore had become rich enough to buy back every acre of the land and to build a brand new house, 20 times finer than the old one if he were so minded. But he was by no means so minded. He restored the old house, made it what it is now. He would not have accepted Chatsworth or stove in exchange. Ok, quindi Graham si dà al commercio, che è il suo sogno, e ce la fa. Diventa abbastanza ricco da ricomprare le proprietà di famiglia. A questo punto della storia io farei volentieri una pausa, devo andare un attimo di là, ma tornerò subito tra voi. Silenzio un attimo il microfono e specchio il video, ma torno subito. Okay, guys, how do you see the video? Do you see my face properly? Let's see if someone else has written. Okay, let's go on. Okay, we are reading a Victorian Christmas ghost tale. It's called Bring Me a Light, and it's about a young gentleman who finds ghosts in his ancestors' his old mansion, and his friend Mr. Earl is telling him the story of his ancestors. His grandfather Graham Winmore chose to be a merchant instead of a gentleman at the court because he wanted to buy back all the properties lost by his family. His mother, Lady Henrietta, was not so happy because she was more old-fashioned. She didn't think gentlemen should trade, but she had to accept her son's choice. We have also discovered that apparently Lady Henrietta Winmore had killed her own husband, masking his death for a natural death, disguising his death as a natural death. Okay, later Graham Winmore managed to get rich through trade and bought back the properties of his family, including the old mansion. The Lady Henrietta lived there still, and superintended all the improvements. She had become reconciled to her son's occupation for the sake of the resulting wealth. She entered eagerly into all his plans for the improvement of his property, and she had some of her own to purpose. It was the autumn of the 10th year since her husband's death, and she was expecting Graham shortly for his yearly visit to the hall. She sat looking over papers of importance in her dressing room. The old servant, who seems to have grown no older, sat sewing in the bedroom below when a housemaid brought in a letter which the old servant took immediately to her mistress. Lady Henrietta opened the letter quickly, for she saw that the handwriting was her son's. Perhaps he's coming this week, she thought with a thrill of delight. Yes, he will come to take me to the Lord Lieutenant's ball. He's proud of his mother yet, and I must look my best. But she had not read a dozen words before the expression of her face changed. Surprise darkened into contempt and anger. Anger deepened into rage and hatred. She uttered a sharp cry of pain. The old servant ran to her in alarm, but her mistress had composed herself, though her cheek was livid. Did your ladyship call me? Yes, bring me a light. In this letter, Graham announced his return home the following week with a wife, a beautiful girl, penniless and without connections of gentility. No words can describe the bitter rage and disappointment of this proud woman. He had a second time thwarted her plans for his welfare, and each time he had outraged her strongest feelings. He had turned merchant, and by his plebeian peddling had bought the land which his ancestors had won at the point of the sword. She had borne that, and had submitted to help him in his schemes, but received a beggarly low-born wench for his daughter-in-law. No, she would never do that. She paced the room with soft, firm steps, like a panther. After a time, thought became clear, and she saw that there was no question of her willingness to receive her daughter-in-law, but of that daughter-in-law's willingness to allow her to remain in the house. But it was an awful thing to see the proud woman when she looked in that fact full in the face. She hated her unseen daughter with a keen, cold hate, a remorseless hate born of that terrible sin, pride. But she was not a woman to hate passively. She paced to and fro, turning and returning with savage, stealthy quickness. The day waned and night began. Her servant came to see if she were wanted, and was sent away with a haughty negative. "She's busy with some weak daughter," murmured the old woman. Graham Winmore's bride was, as he had said, so good and so lovely that no one ever thought of asking who were her parents. She was also accomplished and elegant in manner. She was in all respects but birth superior to the Duke's daughter whom Lady Henrietta had selected for her son's wife. The beautiful Lilian's father was a music master, and she had given lessons in singing herself. Lady Henrietta learned this and everything else concerning her young daughter-in-law that could be considered disgraceful in her present station. But she put a restraint on her contempt, and received her with an outward show of courtesy and stately kindness. Graham believed that for his sake, his mother was determined to forget his wife's low origin, and he became easy about the result of their connection after he had seen his mother caress his wife once or twice. He felt sure that no one could know Lilian and not love her. He was proud and happy to think that two such beautiful women belonged to him. The Lord Lieutenant's ball was expected to be unusually brilliant that year, and Graham was anxious that his wife should be the queen of the assembly. "I should like her to wear the old lace and the jewels, mother," said Graham. The Lady Henrietta's eyebrows were contracted for a moment, and she shot forth a furtive glance at Lilian, who sat near, playing with a greyhound. If Graham had seen that glance, but her words he believed. "Certainly, my son, it is quite proper that your wife should wear such magnificent heirlooms. There is no woman of quality in this county that can match them. I am proud to abdicate my right in her favor. There, Lilian, do you hear? You are to eclipse the Duchess herself." "I will do so if you wish it," said Lilian, "but I do not think that will amuse me so much as dancing." Balls in those times began at a reasonable hour. Ladies who went to a ball early in November began to dress by daylight. Lilian had been dressed by her maid. Owing to a certain sentimental secret between her and her husband, she wore her wedding dress of white Indian muslin instead of a rich brocaded silk petticoat underneath the ground lace robe. The diamonds glittered gaily round her head and her softly rounded throat and arms. She went to the old library, where Graham sat awaiting the ladies. She wanted his opinion concerning her appearance. The legend does not tell how he behaved on this occasion, but leaves it to young husbands to imagine. "You must go to my mother and let her see how lovely you look. Walk first, that I may see how you look behind." So she took from his hand a spray of roses he had gathered, and preceded him from the room, and up the staircase to his mother's chamber. She was in the dressing room above. "Go up by yourself," said Graham. "I will remain on the stairs and watch you both. I should like to hear what she says when she does not think I hear, for she never praises you much to me, for fear of increasing my blind adoration, I suppose." Lilian smiled at him and disappeared up the stairs. It was now becoming dark as he approached the stairs a few minutes afterwards to hear what was said. His mother's voice, in a strange, eager tone, called from above, "Bring me a light! Bring me a light!" Then Graham saw his mother's old servant run quickly from her seat by the window and light a tall taper on the toilet. She carried this up to her mistress and found Graham on the stair on her return. She grasped his arm and whispered fearfully, "Watch her! Watch her!" He did watch, and so... "For God's sake, Mr. Earl," I interrupted, "don't tell me what he saw, for I saw the same dreadful sight." I have no doubt you did, since you say so, and because I have seen it myself. We were silent for some moments, and then I asked if he knew anything more of these people. Well, for the ones who weren't here before, Lady Henriette, the mother-in-law, set her daughter-in-law on fire. Poor Lillian died in flames. She was burned alive by her own mother-in-law. We were silent for some moments, and then I asked if he knew anything more of these people. Yes, the rest is well known to everyone who lives within 20 miles. Graham Winmore vowed not to remain under the same roof with his mother after he had seen his wife's blackened corpse. His grief and resentment were quiet and enduring. He would not leave the corpse in the house, but before midnight had it carried to a summer house in the shrubbery, where he watched beside it, and allowed no one to approach except the old servant who figures in the story. She brought him food and carried his commands to the household. From the day of Lillian's death till the day of her burial in the family vault at Winmore Church, Graham guarded the summer house where his wife lay, with his drawn sword as he walked by the night round about. It was known that he would not allow the family jewels to be taken from the body, and that the wares to be buried with it. Okay, so the man with the sword who we have seen as a ghost was Graham himself. He was watching over his wife's corpse because he didn't want the family jewels to be removed from her. Some say that he finally took them from the body himself and buried them in the shrubbery, as the undertakers, tempted by the sight of the jewels on their corpse, might desecrate her tomb afterwards for the sake of stealing them. This opinion is supported by the fact that a portion of the shrubbery is haunted by the apparition of Graham Winmore in mourning garments and with a drawn sword in his hand. Would you advise me to institute a search for those old jewels? I asked, smiling. I would, said he, but take no one into your confidence. Tom Winmore, you may raise a laugh against you if you are unsuccessful. And if you find them and take them away, which I certainly should do, I interrupted, you will raise a popular outcry against you. The superstitious people will believe that you have outraged the ghost of your great-grandfather, who will become mischievous in consequence. I saw the prudence of this remark, and it was agreed between us that we should do all the digging ourselves, unknown to anyone. I then asked how it was that I was descended from this unfortunate gentleman. Mr. Ayer's story continued thus. After his wife's funeral, Graham Winmore did not return to the Hall, but went away to the south, and never came here again, not even to visit his mother on her deathbed a year after. In a few years he married again, and had sons and daughters. To an unmarried daughter, Jane Winmore, always called Lady Jane by our neighbors, he left the house and lands. He did not care to keep it in the family, and she might leave it to a stranger or sell it if she pleased. It was but a small portion of Graham Winmore's property. As you must know, she, however, this Lady Jane, took a great fancy to the old place. She is said to have lived on terms of familiarity with the ghost of her grandmother, and still more affectionately with her father's first wife. She heard nothing of the buried jewels and saw nothing of her own father's ghost during his lifetime. That part of the story did not come to light until after the death of Graham Winmore, when the Lady Jane herself was startled one evening in the shrubbery by meeting the apparition of her father. It is said that she left her property to her youngest nephew's youngest son, in obedience to his injunctions during the interview. So that for unborn at the time I may consider myself Lord of Winmore Hall by the will of my great-grandfather, I said. Precisely so. I think it an indication that the ghostly power is to die out in your time. The last year of the week, the Lady Henriette Lady Henrietta's life was very wretched, as you may suppose. Her besetting and cherished sins brought their own reward, and her crowning crime was avenged without the terror of the law. For it is said that every evening at sunset, the apparition of her murdered daughter-in-law came before her, wearing the rich dress which was so dear to the proud woman, and that she was compelled to repeat the cruel act and to hear her screams and the farewell curses of her adored son. The servants all left the hall in a fright, and no one lived with the wicked lady, except the faithful old servant, Margaret Thurston, who stayed with her to the last, followed her to the grave, and died soon after. Her son and his wife were sought for by Jane Winmore on her arrival here. She gave them a home and everything they wanted as a housekeeper and farm manager at the Hall. And at the death of Giles Thurston, his son Ralph became farm manager in his place. He continued there till the latest death, when he settled at the little wayside inn which you have seen, and which he calls Lady Jane's Gift. I have but little more to say, Mr. Earl. I sought long for the hidden treasure. We found it. After reading a letter secreted in the escritoire, I have but a little more to say. Okay, so Thomas has finished telling us his tale, and he is telling us how it all ended. Mr. Earl and I sought long for the hidden treasure. We found it after reading a letter secreted in the escritoire, addressed to my youngest nephew's youngest son. In that letter, directions were given for recovering the hidden jewels of the family. They were buried outside the garden fence on the open moor, on the very spot where I can swear I saw the figure of a man with a sword, my great-grandfather, Graham Winmore. After I married, we came to live in the south, and it took every means to let my little estate of Winmore. To my regret, the Hall has never found a tenant, and it is still without a tenant after these 25 years. Will any reader of Once a Week make me an offer? They shall have it cheap. And it is signed JMH. Okay. So, this is the end of this tale entitled Bring Me a Light, that appeared for the first time in 1861 on a magazine called Once a Week, a weekly magazine of the Victorian era. And the anonymous author also ended with this joke. He pretended that Winmore Hall was on rent for the ones who wanted it. Well, that's nice. A nice Christmas ghost story of the Victorian era. It's very interesting because it shows how history and society were important to create this kind of literature. Ghost stories as well as Gothic fiction owes very much to English story. They were born in England as a literary genre. Gothic fiction actually was born from the Anglican way to look at England's Catholic past. Gothic comes from the Gothic ruins of Catholic churches that fell into disuse, that wasn't used anymore after the Reformation. Gothic was also linked to the wild legends of Catholic Europe, which of course sounded like Gothic and barbaric to English Anglicans, to English Reformed Christians. And also ghost tales show us this particular enmity between the Catholics and the Anglicans that has also a very, very big part in this tale we have read. Okay, it's almost 7:30 here in Italy. It's almost dinner time, and it's also Christmas Eve, so I will have I will have dinner with my relatives, and I will wait for Christmas for tomorrow. I wish you a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. I hope you'll enjoy Christmas Eve and you have liked this ghastly tale on this winter night with us. Thank you all for having taken part. Sadly, I haven't seen anyone sending prizes, roses, presents. Okay, I guess I'll die poor unless our Graham win more. Bye, and Merry Christmas again. See you.